Okay. Thank you guys all for coming.
Thanks, Chloe.
My name is Chloe. I'm the chair of the Oberlin Jazz Society, and we're so very lucky to have Lorin Benedict here today to do a Q&A, kind of masterclass. It'll be whatever it is, whatever questions people have. I'm sure we're happy to answer. So if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm going to start this by doing a brief mini performance. I'm just going to pick a standard and then do it for a few minutes, and then we can launch into discussions. What fun finns du, one fin du, one fun fin the one I fin du, twin bop, so hoover weaving sin du, twin bop, sin fast, fin that fin du, wagoover will one win the one I fun fin leaving you, I the will believe in du. One fat the hoover weaving sin du, twin bop, the hoover win fin stooge, washed. Five the hoover win stooge. The hoover will long one hoot, mum, the hoover will long me beep. That note was flat, oh, fin stooge. Five the hoover will the limb dooge. Five hoover the one hoot, twin bop, sits, five the one who gooch. Five the one in dipst. Five the one in dreep, the haven't the one over win fits in bin db. High the one when do one win ill get. Mabba, he'll gooch. Five the lin sin food. Five the one food. Map the long weavy. High the one hung food one. Su the one hoot. Five the one fin dipst. Five fin zoot when bidst. Five fin zoot. Why the one when he visit fin the one long flip fin db. Babu the one in when Babu believe for the Bobby Yabo will believe in you. Have him the will embobst. Fits when even the one when even the one long first. My brother rock high one drip fin thief and though having the will long when map feather having the will limb doot. Five a doot, feather the will long over we feather the will long in Vince finger be over even ute. Fun feather having the will long, feather having the weavers in with even you having the will long mat fin doot. Five fever the one in map, feather the will lip fencing even you having them bits. But fencing gabble over weavers even doot. Five the one when he was in wind even you having the will long when swing gabble over weavers in wind him soused. The one hoover even you having them newt when the will have other hoover will labble over weavers even you having the wap, the hooven drip, the having the one windy be. My the one hit fun fin doot, what the one in wind even you having the marble hoover will believers in map fin doot, what the have other hoover will believers in when you having the will lip fin doot, have on fin doot. The hoover weavers even you having the will limbits, man bap, the hoover long, have the one he be. Feather the long one, Ivan Babble, the believers, even you haven't the one, have a village, rim farm, through the one over win fin suit. Five a leave it, feather win farm, suit, the loot, one whether the win farm, through the one win through the lamp, food wind and bits. Five feathered, one farm, feather the weaver, the win farm, babst, suit, five a leave it, the win food, one whether one Ivan George.
Yeah.
Questions, answers, anything. Yes?
When did you develop, well, first of all, when did you kind of stray away from the traditional singing syllables?
That's a great question. Or initially, I never actually didn't, so the thing that you hear me doing now, certainly it took a long time to develop. I've been doing it for 24 years, but I never did anything in music prior to doing this. So I wasn't a singer in a more normal capacity. I was never a sort of jazz singer who sang words and then decided to go into this later or anything like that. I knew that when I started singing, which was quite late in life, that I wanted to do this. So that's a simple question. I mean, it's a simple answer, but it's a little bit of a weird answer. But so maybe that's why I kind of went as far out with the syllable thing as I did, because it never really occurred to me to do anything else. Hello.
Sort of a continuation of my question.
Uh-huh.
Prompt
No, it's more involved than that. So I come from a family of professional classical musicians. The reason I'm in Ohio now is that I come from Cleveland, actually. My mom was a violinist in the Cleveland Orchestra for 30 years. My sister is a violinist in the Cincinnati Symphony. My wife, who's sitting back there, we drove up from Cincinnati just today, visiting her. And my late stepmother was a French horn player in another orchestra. My dad was a bassoonist in another orchestra. So I come from a family of instrumental musicians, which is probably why I have sort of an instrumental approach. None of them are improvisers, none of them are jazz musicians. But when I always loved jazz, when I went to college at University of Chicago, I'm a physicist in real life, so a scientist. So I studied physics. But I went to Chicago, as you probably know, has a really great jazz scene and blues scene. So I went to a lot of shows there and got really interested in it, started buying recordings, learning solos, not because I wanted to become a musician, but just because I was really an obsessive listener. And then when I went to graduate school at Berkeley, the Berkeley EY, not EE, so the non-music one, where I studied physics, one of my fellow physics graduate students was none other than Vijay Iyer, the pianist. He was originally studying to be a physicist just like me, and he, obviously he quit physics, whereas I didn't, but he introduced me to many musicians, and one of them was the saxophonist Steve Coleman, who you might have heard of. And it was Steve that actually first convinced me to do something in music, and this was in the early 2000s. He and I were hanging out a lot, and he was like, man, you got a really great ear, like you have to do something in music. I don't care that you're older, you have to. And so when he said that, I kind of thought, well, this guy's a bad cat, so I guess he's right. And so that's why I started doing it. And it's taken me a long time, and I go to jam sessions and I get my ass kicked, and I'm gonna get my ass kicked tonight. The 2 tunes or the 3 tunes that George proposed that we do, 2 of them I'm still having a lot of trouble on, so you're gonna see me struggling if you go to it. I'm still struggling. So that's how I started.
You say it's taken like 24 years to develop.
Yeah.
How have the actual syllables that you use changed over time?
That's a good question. The only way that I can answer that myself is to listen to recordings of mine from years past. And they are quite different. I'm using larger numbers of consonants like strung together, like brops, things like this. I don't know why I do this. That is just a compulsion. I mean, it's literally a compulsion. It might even be a form of sickness of some sort. Because I know that, no, seriously, people that are, I'm not a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, but I know that paranoid schizophrenics have kind of a compulsion to make up words and things. And I'm definitely on the spectrum in some way. And so I think some of it is coming in through that. But yeah, I'm just really fascinated by words that have a lot of consonants in them. I don't know whether you know this, but there is an English word that has 7 consonants in a row. It's kind of a compound word, but it's officially a one word. Catchphrase. TCHPHR. Okay, 6, sorry. That's killing.
How do you think about the way that your consonants sit in the time?
Yeah, well, so thank you for asking that. I do view the consonants as my own instrument-specific means of articulation. And so that's actually how it started. I didn't start by saying, I'm going to do this thing that sounds like a language. And what I started saying when Steve first convinced me to start doing something in music was, I'm going to be an instrumentalist on the voice. I'm going to be like a vocal version of a saxophone, but I don't want to emulate a saxophone, so I'll probably just end up scatting. And as I tried to sing more complex, faster, densely chromatic passages, I just noticed that the better I articulated in terms of consonants, the better I could differentiate the subsequent notes. So if I were to sing a chromatic scale, ba, but if I do rot, wind, dim, fin, switz, wind, deal, gun, drot, it's just much more defined. Part of this has to do with my own mechanism. So for instance, unlike Michael Mayo, who I know that you guys had not too long ago, and unlike Bobby McFerrin, I only make use of my chest voice, as we call it. So it's kind of gravelly, there's a lot of overtones. It's not like a sine wave, like when people do falsetto, it's more flute-like. And so that's part of why I feel that I need the extra oomph of the articulation from the consonants to clearly differentiate the distinct pitches. I should also say that my favorite singers in a more normal capacity of singing are always those that make heavy use of consonants. And I think like there's no better example than Carmen McRae. Another good example is Nat King Cole. These people have wonderful, vowels and tone and everything, but I think it's the shaping of each individual note that, to me, makes their thing really interesting. And so even though I'm not a normal singer, I've learned a lot from people like that. I've also spent a huge amount of time listening to rappers. And of course, rappers are also doing what I'm doing, and so a lot of it draws from inspiration from them. You could liken it to, for instrumentalists, you have the same thing, because you can do, like, if you're a pianist, you said, you can do, like, same fingers on a given, or different fingers on a given key, or saxophonists have false fingering and things like this. So I think that all instruments have these sort of instrument-specific means of articulation that are just idiosyncratic to those instruments that can be used in the same way that I'm using the syllables. It's just that since, the syllables, obviously, because we are all hardwired for human language, then it can get really out there because we're used to singing, we're used to saying words like I'm speaking now, and so we have a lot of extra capacity in that area.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So, what's your your shedding process like? Like, what would you say is percentage-wise? Like, how much more do you listen to or draw inspiration from horn players versus vocalists, and how do you combine that into
Well, good question. I mean, I don't. 99% of what I'm into is instrumentalist type stuff.
And who are your
Yeah, I'll tell you. So my biggest influence is actually a tenor player born in 1912 named Don Bias. How many of you are familiar with Don Bias? Okay, good. Are you a horn player, by the way? You, yeah.
Me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so Bias, yeah, so as you might know or might not know, hello. Yeah, Don Bias was born in Oklahoma, but quickly moved to New York and became a mainstay of a lot of so-called territory bands, which are like Count Basie, Jimmy Lunsford, these things that toured around. He actually was in the Basie band for a while, replacing Lester Young. And then the reason he's not more well known is that in 1946, he decided to move to Europe, and he never moved back. And so he basically lived in Paris for a while, lived in Barcelona for a while, he lived in the Netherlands for a while, and he only came back to visit a couple times. And so he's not as well known as a lot of other people, but he was actually a huge influence on Coltrane and Bird and many others. And he himself was actually most influenced by Art Tatum, the pianist, who, as you might know, is from not too far from here. He's from Toledo, Ohio. That's not too far from here. So he thought of himself in the same way that I'm trying to think of myself as a vocal version of the saxophone. And he said this in interviews, he was trying to be Art Tatum on the saxophone. And the fact that he was trying to do that, you can think about what that means and how that has probably made its way into the development of this music. Obviously, typical piano has 88 keys and has an enormous range. And even a tenor saxophone has a much smaller range than that. And so you have to wrap a lot of things around. And if you listen to Art Tatum, he's using a whole piano, And you can imagine that if a guy like Don Bias wants to quote unquote play like Art Tatum, that's already going to imply structurally that he's going to have to deal with things in a different way. He's going to have to think differently about voice leading and things like this. Not that Art Tatum wasn't thinking about voice leading, but when you have to wrap things around, it changes the way the music ends up coming out. Actually, Joe Lovano, who's from Cleveland, you probably know, I don't know him personally, but he apparently used to practice complex harmonic progressions, limiting himself to just a minor sixth. So you're forcing yourself to voice lead as opposed to going way up and down the horn like this. So I have only an octave and a half range, and so it's even more compressed, and therefore I have to really think about wrapping things around, and I like squirrely melodies anyway, so it's perfect for me. So Bias was a big influence. This is kind of sad to say this, my favorite horn player who's still living, he barely plays anymore publicly. And the reason that's sad, but the other thing that's sad is that I've never been able to make his stuff I've never been able to really be overtly influenced by him because his shit is so complex that I don't know what he's doing. And it's a great tenor saxophonist named Gary Thomas. He used to be the director of the Peabody Jazz Program. You probably know that Sean Jones is the director of the current Peabody Jazz Program, but prior to Sean, the guy who started that program was actually Gary. How many of you have heard of Gary Thomas? Only a few of you, that's what I thought. Check this cat out, okay? Write his name down, check him out. It's some unbelievable stuff he's doing. And again, it's partly because he's limiting himself to such a small range that it's now really severely kind of bent around. And he makes use of extremely interesting harmonic and rhythmic stuff. And his vocabulary is totally unique. There's nobody that sounds like him. There's nobody that even sounds remotely like him. In terms of his sort of attack and his sound production on the tenor, he's very reminiscent of a tenor player named Billy Harper, who some of you might have heard of. So if you just listen to like, you know, what he sounds like in terms of the tone, you're like, oh my God, this guy's biting Billy Harper. But then you listen to the ideas and it's like nobody else. So those are the people that I'm really into, but I'm into Woody Shaw, I'm into Freddie Hubbard, I'm into a lot of horn players in general. That's kind of my main thing. I also went through a period of being really into Alan Holdsworth, the guitarist. Really complex stuff. But of course, I can't do such complex stuff because A, I'm an idiot, and B, I don't have keys. And so that's, you know, part of my thing is just sort of trying to bring up the rear. Let's see how much of the stuff that horn players do I can kind of appropriate. And then
Yeah. And how do you maintain like your intonation like that? Like,
well, I don't. I mean, there's a lot of times it's out of tune. It just is. It's not, I'm not maintaining anything. First thing I do after, you know, I go home to California, I'm like, okay, let's hear if I drifted in pitch when I did the little Star Eyes thing for these guys.
Yeah.
And so, no, it's the bane of my existence, because I don't, unlike Michael, I don't have perfect pitch or anything like that, you know. So it's very difficult for me. Yeah.
How do you go about like training your ear and then the way that you're talking about wrapping around things to feel like your vocal range? How did you go about that?
Well, so let me see if I can break apart your question. It's a good question. A lot of what I do when I practice is just, I do practice a lot solo. Like a number of you might have seen Instagram videos of mine or whatever, and I'm playing solo a lot of the time. But for years, I was playing along to like chords, and I still do that even on the Instagram thing, you know, not infrequently. So that's how I practice, and I just like. Maybe what I might do, just as an example, is I might say, okay, I'm going to start, here there's a harmonic progression going, and I'm going to start on a note that's kind of low in my range. And then I'm going to say, okay, to force myself to voice lead, I'm going to only go up. But pretty soon I'm going to hit the top of my range because I don't have much. And so then I have to move it around, and I think up. But the one thing that I can do is I can octave reduce on the fly, and I was kind of always able to do that. And so, you know, I don't have to think very hard to do that, and so it just happens. It's just I can just do it. But that doesn't mean that a lot of times when I listen back to a certain thing I did, I might even be like, "Oh, why did I do that for?" Because I'm thinking about the notes being higher, even if they're not. And then when I listen to what it actually is, I see that the choice, what the intervals ended up being, was like, "Well, that was lame," you know. So there's kind of the illusory thing of what it is for me, like internal to me as I'm doing it, and then there's what it actually is, and then when I listen to it later, it may be that the actual effect, even on me, is not what I intended because I was thinking something else. You know what I mean? What do you do in terms of that? You probably have a much bigger range than me, because most singers do, but how do you think about that?
As far as like ear training goes, like how you're saying, I can octave reduce pretty much very easily. So
Yeah.
I might take like a chord and go as high up as I can go, and then just have I eventually have to bring it
Yeah,
down.
that's exactly how I think about it, yeah. Yeah?
What exercises do you do for practicing time and like rhythmic variation?
Well,
I know you have some, but
yeah. Well, a lot. So, first of all, I take a multi-pronged approach to every aspect of what I'm doing. And so let me illustrate what I mean. You probably all do this too, but I'll just say what I do. And that is that if there are certain aspects of the time in terms of a certain feel that I want to develop, or even certain rhythmic superpositions of things, or playing over an involved form that has a more complex sort of temporal information in it, I might, get a practice track that has that stuff and then work specifically on negotiating those things. There's also singing along or playing along to records, where the records are things where you like the time of the people that are playing, is great. And it bears repeating, although I think most of you know this. It may seem lame because, well, they're not interacting with me, those aren't actual people. But since the beginning of jazz, people have been practicing along to records. I mean, famously, Lester Young, who was born in 1909, used to carry around Frankie Trumbauer recordings. Frankie Trumbauer was a baritone saxophonist who was older than him, and he was practicing along to Frankie Trumbauer recordings. So from the beginning of jazz, since the development of jazz also coincides with the development of recorded music, it is a music that has been brought up around people playing the recordings. Not that you don't want to only do that, of course, that's why you're here, you're playing with each other. But it is an indispensable thing because, trying to play along with like an Art Blakey kind of thing from Jazz Messengers, that's some different shit compared to what people are doing today. And you'll learn different things by doing that than you will by playing with people today. Not that it's better, it's just different, And of course it's not the same as if you were to play with Art Blakey in person, but you can't do that because he's dead, and even if he was dead, he wouldn't be playing with our sorry asses, So anyway, you get the point. So I mean, there's like, for instance, I got a Kendrick Scott recording recently. It's a really good trio recording of his. That's his most recent Blue Note thing, and I'm like, man, that's interesting. Like I always think to myself, and you guys probably do this too. If I were in that band, like, could I hang? And then I'm like trying to sing along with him, like, damn, I can't. Like, what do I have to do? And then it's just, I just put the thing on repeat, and then that doesn't mean I would actually be able to hang with them in the real thing, because they'd be throwing other stuff at me. But at least it gives me a clue as to, like, what are the things that they're doing that are ever so slightly different from what other people might do that might trip me up, So there's that. There's the playing along with recordings thing. But then, I'm being rather voluble, sorry about that. But then there's also, I might just take a particular ostinato figure and try to move it over a tune. Like one of the things I like to do on my little Instagram thing, I don't know why I pointed to that, because those are not with me amplified, is like taking a clave. Like I love the rumba clave thing, bunk, 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 bunk. And then just doing that over a tune in 4, and just maintaining that, and then trying to keep the form clearly, and then also try to be within the groove of that. So,
Fiddle fiddle windu fiddle wong high fun fin dip fiddle wong with high the long wind dip fiddle fun fin bop fits with even you Ivan the long hoot windy fun soused.
That was just a little bit of Alone Together or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I think I definitely like those horn players that always wanted to be drummers. And so I'm a singer that always wanted to be a horn player who always wanted to be a drummer. You know what I mean? Like, I like horn players that want to play like drummers, and I'm a singer that wants to play like them. So it's a little meta, but...
And what do you think you get out of doing like the clave exercise, for example? Like how do you grow from doing that sort of thing?
Well, it just makes me think, because, I don't know, just maybe because I came up in a world of classical musicians. I was just thinking this, my wife and I went to Cleveland Orchestra doing Beethoven Ninth a few days ago. It was great. But it was kind of funny because, like, as great as it is, you guys are probably hip to this scene. The timpanist, like, they're always doing things on one. It's a totally different concept of drums from in this idiom, right? It's like, it's more like about color, and it's cool, but it's just, so because I came up with that, I think I have a tendency to always be like on 1, and if there's a thing on 4, I'm always gonna, I mean, maybe less so now, but at least, in years past, I would be going, 5 over 1 with evil wabba, and so part of it is to get out of that. But not everybody has that tendency. If you have a tendency that you came up listening to other things, like if you come from Cuba, that's the last thing that's going to occur to you to do that. So you probably don't have to, do what I'm doing. But I think it helps me to free me up to just think about starting and ending phrases in different places. That's another thing about Gary Thomas that's really interesting. And I hope when you check out Gary Thomas, check out where he starts and ends his phrases. It's different shit. Like, he's obviously spent a lot of time thinking about where to start and end things that's different from what most other people And it doesn't mean that it's better, but it's just that, because I think we all understand this, but I'll just say it anyway. Most of us have a certain way of playing, and even though it is infused with a goodly amount of variation, because we are humans that are complicated, which is great, we sometimes don't realize just how boxed in we are. We don't realize maybe that there's a whole bunch of other possibilities that we haven't thought of even. And so, and I know this is true with me, and so just coming up with different exercises like that helps me. Now, a lot of the people that I play with sometimes are really more into this different time thing than I am. One of the guys who's a good friend of mine and who I have a duo album with is the great bassist Kim Cass. How many of you have heard of Kim Cass? Okay, this guy's a bad dude. Kim Cass has spent huge amounts of time practicing playing things at every, like, if he's playing a thing in 4, he'll divide up a measure into 16 things, like, all the eighth notes and the ands of every eighth note, and then playing where he's comping, like a normal comping thing, but on every possible division within there, and see if he can do it consistently, things like that. I mean, and there's other people I know that are into that kind of thing. So he has really kind of developed this hyper-awareness of time, on a very quantized level. But his main thing that he's known for is all these superpositions, which even live outside of the grid of that. So that's maybe the first point. So I haven't gotten to the point where I've done that yet, but that's maybe the next step for me also. The other thing I want to say, though, is that since I've spent a lot of time really checking out rappers, the thing that I think is so interesting about a lot of rappers is that I'm convinced that a lot of them happen onto certain rhythmic things that they might, really just through the content of what they're saying. Now, I'm not saying anything that has any literal meaning, but I think that a lot of these people, they might want to say a certain thing, and it might actually not lie on the form in a normal way, and so that kind of pushes them into quote-unquote over-the-bar line kinds of phrasing. And then the ones that have a real interest in that, like an inclination towards that, like Pharaoh Monch or people like this, then they really go crazy with it. But I think that, so the reason I say that is that the other thing I try to do sometimes is to think about saying something actual. Like, even though this is a little weird, but even though I'm singing this I'm saying this nonsense, syllable stuff, I think about actually saying real words. And maybe I'll look around the room and I'll try to play something having to do with shape of what I see, and I'll try to describe the room to somebody or describe people in the audience to somebody. And then I find that the phrasing ends up somewhere else, and it ends up definitely incommensurate with, the grid of what I normally would have thought of. And so that helps me to get out of that thing too, just to be more expressive. But I'm no master of any of that. So, Yes?
Do you think that this is sort of abstract, but do you think being a physicist informs your musicianship and reflects your
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of people have asked me that before. I think the short answer is no, but let me put it this way. I'm a very analytical person, and that's why I became a physicist. And so even though I've adopted a more kind of intuitive approach to music, I think that certainly the fact that I am an analytical being, you know, I think it has so it's not like my study of physics has influenced this, it's more just that I'm the kind of guy who is a nerd through and through, and so I'm sure that's informed the way that I think about music. The thing that's a little weird though is that, like, I actually don't know any theory, I can't read, I don't know anything about the keyboard, so I've actually, and obviously you all are already way beyond all that if you're here. I would not get into a program like this, because I know nothing, in terms of on paper. So I'm not at all advocating this as a good way to be. If I knew the things that you all know, I would be better still than I am, you know. But I've chosen for whatever reasons to be totally ear-based and totally intuitively based. But I think that the analytical thing then comes in. I mean, the fact that I'm talking ad nauseum about the way I'm thinking about what I'm doing, I think probably exemplifies that. Yeah?
Earlier we were talking about recording yourself and listening back to it.
Yeah,
And
I heard you talking about that.
Right, and
So that's a huge thing for me.
yeah, can you just talk on that?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am now if I wasn't doing that. I mean, it's such a huge thing for me. And that's really, this whole Instagram video thing of mine that some of you have seen, that's really just me being able to listen to me. And I like to hear, like, I listen to what I just did, and then I go back and I listen, like, what did I do 3 months ago? What am I putting in that's new? What have I lost that I want still to be in there? I mean, it's like I have a hyper focus on like every little thing I'm doing. Some people don't like to do that, and that's fine, and they sound great. But for me, I'm just really into like constantly examining what I sound like. And so it's been really useful for me. But I mean, it's not, yeah, go ahead.
Well, with that, do you like record something and then the first take you upload that? Or?
Almost always.
Okay.
98% of the time, it's a first take. And that's why you hear me saying things like I said here, oh, that was flat. I do that on the thing too, in the videos, you know, because it's really, I mean, sometimes it just sucks and it sucks. Every once in a while, I'll start something and I realize, okay, I'm going to abort this, start it again. I do that, you know, every once in a while, but most of them are one take. But I don't have any kind of religion about that. I mean, I would be happy to not, you know, it's just that I'm so killing it, that's good enough. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, I mean, being more practical, it's just that, and you learn this the more you record yourself, because I've been on many other people's recordings, and I have like 12 albums myself, and what you learn is that when you do things many times, it usually doesn't get better. It's usually just different. And so if you took the first take, it would have been not, I mean, you know, okay, this was better, but that other thing was worse. It's just kind of a practical thing. Once you've been doing it long enough, you realize that it's diminishing returns to do it many times. So when I say I listen back to it a lot, though, that it's really useful for me. Like, there's a lot of times I think that I'm doing one thing, but actually I wasn't, you know, and so it's, you know, that's where it's really useful.
Can you talk about criticism and finding space for your concepts when you're trying to relate to other people?
What do you mean by criticism?
Any experiences you've had where people either don't relate to what you're doing, or maybe they say something that's a little implicitly or something a little, you know,
Sure.
not interested in what you're offering or something, you know?
Good, that's good. Well, okay, yeah, I will say some things about that. First of all, in my particular, well, there's two things I want to say first as a preamble. The first thing is that, at least I've found for me, that I don't get too much negative criticism, but I don't think that's because that everybody likes what I'm doing. It's just that people tend to keep to themselves if they don't like something. It's very rare that people are like, man, you suck, you know. That even if they think that, they're probably not going to articulate that to my face. It would be fine if they did, but they don't generally. So I don't take this kind of the positive stuff from people to mean that everybody likes what I'm doing. That's the first point. The second thing, though, is that I think I am my own worst critic. And I think it's good to be one's own worst critic. I don't, you know, I mean, it's hard to imagine somebody being harder on myself than I am, just for me personally. But having said that, I mean, there are a lot, I can even give you some recent ones. I mean, there are people who even, I think, like what I'm doing, but who, like, man, you know, like, what, you're amazing, but if you just did, like, if you cooled it on the syllable thing, like, it might be a little better, because then I could appreciate more of, like, the notes and rhythms you're doing. Like, you know, and the thing is, like, I understand that. I'm not going to do anything differently. But I also, somebody asked me this recently in an interview, and I gave the answer I'm about to give you. I'm basically 100% sure that if I had not heard Lorin Benedict before, and then all of a sudden I hear me, I would be in that camp. I'd be like, man, I respect what this guy's trying to do, but turn that shit off. You know, it would be too much for me. It would be like, come on. And so I have personally, I have total sympathy for people who don't like what I'm doing. You know, so it doesn't bother me at all. The other thing I should say about it is that, you know, if I think about just trying to be an artiste or whatever, I think that what matters is just that you find ways to connect to a number of people who are themselves artists or appreciators of art so that you can all grow together. And let's say that there's, you know, some N people in the world, where N is some natural number, who are really into my thing. If it turns out that there's 10 times N people that fucking hate my thing, that doesn't matter. If that number N is big enough so that, you know, I get to play with George, and I get to do this, and I get to come here and talk to you guys, and some number of you are here, and whatever. If there's a whole bunch of people, 20 times the number of you people that hate what I'm doing, it doesn't subtract from this. You know what I mean? So it's not a war to try to like find, like, I want the most people in my camp. It doesn't matter how many people are against you as long as there are enough people that are for you. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that you don't play instruments.
That's correct.
Is there a visual way that you think about melodies or chords?
You know, I think I've only recently begun to realize or admit that I do have such a thing, that just like, I do have a kind of upness and downness of, I see things moving up and moving down. But it's nothing very literal. I'm certainly not a synesthete, you know? And I don't like see anything very specific that's related to an instrument because I don't know anything about that. So yeah, it's really pretty much just the sound, but there is a kind of general upness and downness kind of thing that I think about. Yeah.
Is there a way that you go about specifically breaking habits or establishing good ones as well?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, for the longest time, I was just a huge dragaholic. Like, any time that I would play anything and something got a little bit difficult, I would just start to slow down. And that's why I really started doing during the pandemic so much of this recording myself that has ended up on Instagram, is to try to, mostly to police that. And I'm still dragging, but less than I used to. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just repetition. And so for that, I do this constant thing of like, I'll play just by myself, and then when I see that I'm getting into a dragging thing, I'll turn on a metronome, I'll do many different tempi, and then I'll turn it off again. And so it's just this kind of thing. I mean, it's just the usual stuff. Yeah.
So you think when that habit comes up, like as soon as it comes up, you address it immediately?
Well, probably not, because I'm sure that there are bad habits that I've had in the past and that I still have that I don't know that I have. I mean, I can only address something if I know about it.
Well, yeah.
So, but yes, in general, like I'll just say, one of the tunes that we're going to maybe do tonight at the FEV is this Horace Silver tune, which seems really simple. It's not many chords long, and yet there's two places where there is like a parallel movement. It's like a minor 9 chord and then another minor 9 chord, but some interval away. So it's not like a normal functional harmony thing that uses 5/1 stuff. It's a different thing. If you listen to it, it's playing the role of a cadential kind of a thing, but it's different. And damn it, it's giving me fits. And so I'm finding myself screwing up every time I lead into that part. I'm probably going to screw up tonight, and that's fine. And I'll just try to keep doing it and get better at it. But so, yes, the minute that I was like, oh, this is a pretty easy tune. Oh, that'll be good. Because I heard the melody. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And then, you know, it's called Silver Serenade. Maybe many of you know it. And, yeah, I mean, I'm doing all sorts of bad, habity, wrong things in there because this thing is not something I'm used to doing. And so what does that mean? It means that I need to practice this, even way after this Fev business. I need to be practicing it for the next few months, and that's what I'm going to do until I'm cool on it, you know. So I'm glad you suggested it. When I find something like that, oh man, that's when I'm just like, okay, perfect. I recently, like in February of this year, I got to do a gig at Sam First in LA with Gerald Clayton. And the main reason I wanted to play with him is because, I mean, I love his stuff, but it's also that his stuff, like when I would do this exercise of trying to sing along with records of him, or him and Kendrick, or him and Justin Brown, or whatever, like, man, I can't hang even if I know what's coming, you know. So I requested that I learn a tune of his. It's one of his tougher tunes called The Light, which you can find on his Live at the Village Vanguard recording. And I worked on it for a month and a half beforehand. And then, you know, I didn't exactly kill it, but I did it, you know. And it was exactly that. I wanted to jump right into, like, playing with the cat in stuff that I basically can't do. And I learned so much in that 6 weeks leading up to that gig. It wasn't really about doing the gig with him. It was about the 6 weeks of me kicking my ass into getting to the point where I could do the gig. And so I'm all about that. Yes?
You mentioned that you don't know how to play an instrument currently, and I was wondering whether that was a choice that you made as like maybe you're just not particularly interested to play one, or like you're thinking about it as like an unnecessary kind of abstraction between your ear and the music you want to make.
Good question. I think, you know, the unnecessary abstraction thing is part of it just because I know that at this point, like, I'm a singer, and so no matter what I know on an instrument, at the end of the day, I'm going to be having to sing it. And so I've known a lot of other singers in the past and presently, who know a lot of theory, and when we're singing together, they like want to be at the keyboard and punching out things. I'm like, yeah, but what are you going to do if you can't do that, you know? So I like to take away the middle being of just like making sure that I can do this. However, it's also the case that that is kind of a silly attitude, because obviously if I knew another instrument, or even more than one instrument, I would have multiple ways of looking at what I'm doing now, and of course that would inform it, and of course I would be better than I am now if I did that. So I have not adopted a defensible position. You know, this is kind of like, don't try this at home. You know, it's not a good idea to do this. I think you should definitely learn all the shit that you guys are learning, including you vocalists that I'm sure are learning, you know, at least basic things on the piano, if not more than basic. But, yeah, the other thing is because I'm a scientist, I'm really busy with the physics research thing, and so, like, you know, probably if I wasn't also doing that, then I would be like, okay, I'll have a side project of learning the drop whatever things on the piano. But I just, you know, I'm really busy doing the other thing, and so I'm just going to do it like this for now. But I'm not making that choice because I think it's better. Go ahead.
If we had a gradient from performer to composer,
Yeah.
do you feel you're in the middle anywhere? Do you
No,
have any goals?
I'm way over on the performer side.
Okay.
And part of this is because I don't read and write music, so composing things is a little tough. There are tunes that I have quote unquote written that are really more that I had an idea and then I worked out with someone who does write and or with a computer what the thing is, and then I kind of made a practice track where I learned my own shit. And so I do have like a handful of tunes. I'll give you an example of some of them. They tend to be kind of involved in terms of rhythmic stuff because, you know, I mean, the guy who started me doing this was Steve Coleman. He's Mr. Rhythm, you know. But so that's part of it. But yeah, I'm definitely not a composer. But I do I mean, I'm really into really great composers, especially in the classical idiom. Not that I think that those people are better, but I just have, because I come from that world as a listener and because of my family. And so I do think a lot, especially when I'm engaging in free improvisation, which I've done more and more over the past, say, 5 years or so, or even longer than that. I'm trying to be a spontaneous composer, and I am thinking about developing things. I'm thinking about sort of ritornello. I'm sometimes even thinking about a rondo kind of a form where I have certain things that return periodically. I'm not always doing that, but I like to use those constructs because I think that's very useful. But I would not say that I'm any kind of a composer. I think most people, I mean, I know Michael, for instance, I've never met him, but that guy is like a pretty serious composer and arranger. Like, I am 99.999% an executor of the, an executant of the voice. I'm executing things. I'm not doing much that's in the way of pre-planned stuff. But let me give you an example of a tune that I have co-written with a friend of mine. This is called Shoo Shoo, and I will just do it, and then I'll say what it is.
Fat, thuj, one, thuj, one, thuj, one, thuj, one, thust, one, thust, one, thuj, one, thuj, when the one, thuj, one, thuj, man, be, one, thuj, one, thuj, one, thuj, one, thust, one, thust, one, thuj, one, thuj, the one, thuj, one, thuj, five for the one, food, fun, fin, lip, fin, van, for the one, in best, fin, five, fin, velude, when bap, fin, suit, one, foo, fin, leave on one, bap, food, when bun, fin, suit, one, vin, through the one, with a one, win, ufang, feven, through the one, without fin, bun, fiddle, who will even yabba oot, bite, fin, span, fiddle, who will even babble, with the high weather, who one, with one, so, far believe it, swing, yabba, who will believe as it, with for one, with the lobby, who will with the high weather, who will win, fin, bap, I went for that, fin, through the one, long, wang, wang, fizz, foo, one, when the believe in your high weather, who for one, fin, bap, Ivan, no, and be. Fa believe it, the who one, with Abba who will believe as in with even you haven't the one, with a wabble the one, with over heavers in with even you haven't the one, by that, without fin dim food, haven't bapped, foo fin feathood, with bam bap, fit feathood, fin doot, one fin dim, fin bap, in suit, wag up food, wagood, one feathood, one van dim bap, feathood, wethoo, for, fin dim, fin doot, one win bap, for gap, five fin dim, fin drin bitst.
So that's the last thing, the last thing there was the melody. But what that was it's a thing that involves cycling. So that was, it took me many years to be able to do that. So there's only 4 chords. It's basically 1, 6, flat, 2, 5. Bum, 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 bum. Those are the roots. Bifen the one, hoot, windim, bum, hiven the bum, soot, windim, bee, bee, bee. And then, but the harmonic rhythm of it is over something that has 5 rhythmic units, so it's not 4 things, so there's cycling. And what that is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, you bop, 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 bop. Okay, so when you do that, so the first thing that I did, the first chorus, I did just the bass notes. Bop, I'll do it faster now so I go through it quicker. Bop, 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 bum, bop, bum, 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 bum. Fabulous, but even though along with it, but we even bump and see, but once we got it, we will believe is in, even you can bump with up and see, but I have the one when you visit, and it will believe is it. Bump 5 and then, but the one without the one when even the one without it was written, that it will believe is in with you. So, that's, yeah, so that's an example of a tune that I co-wrote. So it's more, I wouldn't call that a composition, it's more like an exercise, but then what I like to do and what we've done, that's a tune that was co-written by this guitarist friend of mine named Eric Vogler. And we have a band together called Bleeding Vector. Because it's if you take the two our last names, Benedict and Vogler, and you rearrange the letters, you get Bleeding Vector. So we wrote it together for ourselves, and then we also played with a really good saxophonist named Casey Knudsen, with which we have a trio. And we might use that as just one element in a longer thing that's a whole suite, where that may be peppered throughout in different places. And maybe the first time you hear it was like the first time. The second time might be really slow and maybe even out of time. And maybe there's one time which is real fast like that. And then, so it's like, that's what I like to do, is to kind of compose, quote unquote, episodically, where we take some interesting, gnarly thing, but then that just becomes the germ of an idea that gets expanded into a longer kind of suite. So I like doing that. Yes. You first, and then you.
You've had there's been a lot of great collaborations that you've done over the years, and I'm wondering, conversely, who are living musicians that, if given the chance, you would love to collaborate with?
Well, I want to play more with this Gerald Clayton cat, because I'm cat bad. And he's like my favorite jazz musician who's currently playing, and his time is just so killing. I really want to play with Tyshawn eventually. He and I have known each other for years, and we've talked about it. We've jammed together in the past, but like 20 years ago, and I would like to play with him because I think it would be fun. I've always really wanted to play with Mary Halverson. She and I have also talked about it a lot, but those might be the main ones of people I haven't yet played with that I would like to. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I guess them. But, I mean, there's lots of people. I mean, but those are the ones that I'm kind of, I mean, I do have some really fun collaborations with people. Like, I'm getting a lot out of playing with, I don't know if I know you know them, but there's this bass player who lives in LA, Logan Kane. And then there's his girlfriend is this incredible alto player, Nicole McCabe. And so I do a lot of things with the two of them also. We just did a gig a few weeks ago, and I'm going to do something else with them in LA. And they have a very funny they have a band called Dolphin Hyperspace, and it's like this funk blast kind of thing. And they also play with Lewis Cole frequently. Do you know who that is? Lewis Cole, you know? So, in fact, I'm going to be doing a little guest appearance on a Knower gig in Berkeley. I have to start practicing for it. So these are like musicians that are silly in ways that are different from me being silly. Like my silly thing is the syllables, and their silly thing is that, they're wearing skeleton costumes and stuff like this. So, I like people like that too, and plus they're great musicians, You also, let me go to here first, because the two of you had questions. Go ahead, and then you.
I was just gonna ask, how do you decide when you've mastered a tune, or when you really know it?
That's a great question. Okay, I'm gonna answer it, but then I'm gonna go back on what I'm about to say. The simple answer is I try to get to the point where I can anticipate what's coming next in a really, in a very comfortable way. So, for instance, if I go back to the Star Eyes thing I was doing,
Fifth oot, five of the one oot, with even you will long in win infant dread swingle when you either the oot hoot.
I was able to anticipate that next part. If I'm not able to do that, like if I can't, while I'm doing part N, if I can't hear part N+1 while I'm in part N, I don't really know the tune. So I like to know it well enough that I really can lead into the next part in a musical way. Because to me, all of this stuff is really about motion. It's not about being here and being there. It's about moving from here to there. And so I place a very high premium on my ability to anticipate. So let's say that I can do a tune, but I can't, like for instance, the tune that I'm saying that is giving me fits now, that George suggested, there are parts of that where I can anticipate. But the parts that are giving me trouble, like what I can do is I can be like, I'm going to sing something, and then I hear where it is. Of course, we're going to be playing in a non-chording thing, so it's not going to be a pianist beating out chords. But there, I have to like sort of use the coming up for air method, you know what I mean? Which is not what you want to be, not what I want to be doing. I want to be able to hear that next tonal center really clearly so that I can lead into it any number of ways, you know? So when I'm satisfied that I quote unquote know something when I'm able to do that. And there is a rhythmic analog of that, like in this shoo-shoo thing, which is kind of involved. You know, if all I could do is just like, you know, count on my fingers and I'm only hitting on the one of every measure, I would say I don't know it yet. I know it when I can rhythmically voice lead in a way which allows some elasticity in interpretation. So that's what I say, what I mean when I know something. So one thing that I think about a lot is, let's say that there is a structure that I'm having trouble on, and I say, well, how much do I want to work on it? Because that's part of what you're asking. I pick something that I feel that I can do really well, like a 12-bar blues, okay? And I think, all that shit that I'm able to do in a 12-bar blues, when am I going to be able to do that on this? Now, of course, it's a different structure, but that's kind of the litmus test for me. Like, when I can be as expressive on whatever the thing is that I'm on the thing that I feel I know the most, then I really know it. So, the second part to my answer is, there are many times when I thought I knew something in the way that I mentioned, and then my ears got better over the years, and I'm like, damn, I thought I knew that, but actually, I don't know it that well, because there's a part of it I wasn't hearing properly, you know. So, even things that I think I know now, I might decide I don't know them later, because my standards have risen. You.
Well, first I wanted to say that your voice is so satisfying to listen to because
Aww.
your pitch accuracy is like, I feel like I can hear every single.
Well, that's very nice of you. Thank you. I wish that I felt that way, but thanks so much.
And then my question is, you mentioned that a lot of your knowledge about music and jazz comes from kind of like obsessive like listening.
Yes.
You dropped in some historical references like throughout this Q&A, so
Yes.
I was just wondering about like any research you've done into jazz, or if any of those references have come from like conversations with musicians. And
Yes.
have like a story about.
That's a wonderful question. A lot of it is just me being a jazz fan nerd, and I'm reading articles and things like this. But there are certain people that I did, like the Steve Coleman guy. That guy has been around a long time. He was born in 1956. He came up in the south side of Chicago, learning from Von Freeman, who himself played with Charlie Parker and people like this. And, you know, I mean, and then he moved to New York in 1978, and he worked with the Fat Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra, which is now the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra, and he started working with Sam Rivers and Dave Holland and all these people. So I've learned a lot of stories from him that have stuck with me. You know, he's probably the main older musician that is famous and that is very connected, or that I've known, and there's a lot of others that I don't. But I mean, you know, I mean, you guys are so lucky because you got Billy Hart here, you've got Eddie Henderson. I mean, these people are monsters. I mean, these people are a generation older than Steve, and they're just as killing at least. And I mean, well, Billy, I mean, played with like everybody, you know, from Jimmy Smith to. So you have much more access than I do, frankly, much more.
Really,
Yeah.
how around? Like, we're actually at the time where we can take a few more questions.
Okay.
I was wondering if you ever played with other singers, or you.
That's a great question. I have more recently actually started to play with other singers. Because I have a very instrumental kind of an approach to what I'm doing, not surprisingly, I mostly play with instrumentalists, but one singer who came up similarly to me, although she's taken a very different direction, is a singer named Jen Shu. Anybody ever heard of her? So her last name is spelled S-H-Y-U, and she's of Taiwanese and East Timorese descent, born in the United States though. But so she does a lot of stuff that now relates very seriously to folk music of different traditions from East Asia, from China, from Korea, from Indonesia. But she started kind of scatting like me, and so we've done a few things together years ago. But more recently, I've started to do some things with people in the free improvisation arena There are some people who are not, they're serious improvisers, but they're not coming out of jazz, you know, like I am, or like ostensibly you are if you're here. And so I've worked with a number of singers in that area. And one of the people in that area, who's one of my closer colleagues, you know, is a guy who is much older than me. Most of my colleagues are people like George that are much younger than me. I'm 55. But this guy just turned 88, and he sings in his own made-up language, which is totally different than mine. And his thing has nothing to do with jazz. It has nothing to do with harmonic anything. It has nothing to do with rhythmic anything. But it's really interesting. And we actually have a duo album together, and we have a duo group together. We've been playing together for 7 or 8 years now. There are a few others, but yeah, I mean, it's happened more recently for me. Yeah.
Who is that?
His name is Ron Heglin, Heglin. And with the duo album that we have, you can find at Bandcamp, is called Duos and Solos. Yes?
Have you or will you ever consider like using effects on your voice?
Good question. I don't think I want to do effects on my voice anytime soon, like myself, because I think I have my hands full, as it were, with what I'm doing with all this wacky syllable thing. But I don't mind if it's the right kind of person and I think that the vibe is right. I don't mind someone else doing that. And my most recent album, which was just released a few days ago, is with a DJ/electronic musician from Berlin who goes by the strange name UFO Hawaii. I don't know why he goes by that. His actual name is Achim Troy, and he has taken, like, he gave me a bunch of tracks to improvise over. I did that, and then he took my improvisations and spliced them up and sampled them like a DJ would and put all kinds of weird effects on them. So you can listen to that if you want. And yeah, so I'm certainly open to other people doing that, but I don't think I'm going to do that anytime soon, even though many other singers, of course, do.
Any last questions? Everyone give a round of applause.